Hi folks, I know it's been a while, but I'm back. On today's episode of Northern Outlier, I'm going to be showing you how to install a French drain. So you might recall approximately a year ago, I had all sorts of water coming in under the walls of the garage. I did a video on it, which I'll put right here, but essentially there were 4 things that I wanted to do to fix the problem, one of which was install a French drain around 2 of the walls. So last fall, I finally got to it. I got to the French drain. So today I'm going to be showing you the footage from me installing the drain. It's a little bit different. I'm not going to be doing a whole lot of talking. I'll point out a few key things along the way, but I'm basically just going to let the footage roll. If you have any questions, put them down below in the comments and I'll make sure to answer them. So with having said that, I hope you enjoy it. Again, hit that like button, hit subscribe if you haven't already. Enjoy. So you can see here that I have some strings set up in my trench. Now this was very important to ensure that I had the right slope. So I used a string level and made sure that these strings were perfectly level and accurate once I was done digging the trench. Basically this allowed me to go along with a measuring tape to see that I had the right drop or the right slope, and that way the water would drain correctly. So I'm going along here with a measuring tape and I'm just making sure that there's the correct slope. So you want at least 1%. In my case, I was about 1.5%. So how that works is for every 10 feet, it should drop 1 inch for 1%. In my case, I was closer to 1.5 inches every 10 feet. So I'm going along every 10 feet. I'm taking a measurement, just checking. If I did this once, I probably did it half a dozen times just to make sure everything was perfect and ready to go for installing the drain. So now that I've made sure I have the right slope, I'm ready to line the trench with landscape fabric or geotextile fabric. I'll put a link down below for what I was using, but it's very important that this material is non-woven because you want it to be permeable. You want the water to go through it. So that is the one thing to keep in mind. So I'm just laying down my fabric, cutting it, and then I'm going to go ahead and put it in the trench. So the one thing I wanted to point out about the pipe I'm using here is it's 4-inch perforated pipe with a sock on it. The reason I used one with a sock on it is the material that I got to put in the trench had quite a bit of fines in it. It wasn't perfect. It wasn't washed rock by any means. The individual I bought it from screened it out as best as possible, but there was quite a bit of fines. So I didn't want anything getting into the pipe. So that's the reason why I went with a sock. So if you're using material that has quite a bit of fines in it, I would highly recommend using a sock. It's just gonna keep stuff from getting down into that pipe and clogging it up in the future. Another important note regarding the pipe is I'm putting it on the very bottom of the trench. A lot of videos out there and a lot of individuals put a layer of rock on the bottom and then put the pipe. After watching lots of videos by I think it's the French Drain Man, he recommends putting the pipe on the bottom of the trench, and to me that makes a lot of sense. You don't want to have rock down there because that's just space where water can sit. I want to have the pipe down on the bottom of that trench to make sure I'm moving all that water away from the garage. So I put my pipe in first before I put any rock in. You can see here that I'm capping the ends, which is very important. So I used a cap that went on the inside, and then just as a bit of overkill, I put one of the caps that goes over the outside as well. I'm pulling that sock up around that cap, and then I'm going to use my tape and go around it several times to make sure it's secure. So another tip when you're doing it this way and you've got the pipe on the bottom of the trench, what I did is I used just some pieces of firewood I had lying around as weight on top of the pipe, just to make sure no rock slipped down and underneath that pipe, in which it would probably mess up your overall slope of the pipe. I wanted the pipe as flat as I could get on that bottom of the trench. So I'm just going along, I'm putting some rock in. Once it's weighed down enough, I just remove those pieces of wood. So once I had enough rock in that trench and over the pipe, I folded the landscape fabric over and used the pegs to kind of peg it together. So this is what's called the burrito wrap. So a lot of individuals at this point will basically backfill with the material that they excavated out of the trench. I didn't want to do that because my material was heavy in clay. Clay is not permeable, water does not move through it well, and I didn't want any water sitting up against the garage. I wanted it to just go down through the rock into the drain and away from the garage. So I purchased extra rock and I'm basically just backfilling with that clean rock at this point. So at this point, the bulk of the work is done. Basically, to finish it off, I just need to install the drywell. I decided to do a drywell because I didn't want to run a pipe all the way to the edge of my property. I was digging everything by hand and it was just a lot of work. So I thought I'd start with trying the drywell to see how well it worked. This involved digging a hole approximately 4 foot deep by 4 foot wide, and then laying landscape fabric within that hole and pegging it in place. So you can see that I've got it all nicely lined with that landscape fabric. The pipe comes in where it's going to go into the drywell. So now essentially I'm at the point where I need to put some rock in the bottom. And then I'm at the point where I need to put in that drywell. So I'm just removing the top hole where that pipe's going to fit in. This is a relatively simple drywell. It's got basically 2 halves to it that kind of clip together. I zip tied it. Once I had the pipe connected, I also use, there's a lining that goes on the outside of the drywell so no fines can get in there. And I just kind of, I'm tucking it in under the lid. You can see that lid sits on there. One thing you will notice here is I have that pop-up emitter installed on the lid. So I cut a hole in the top of the lid and I used a pipe to basically fill the distance between the pop-up emitter and the lid. Now this is how this works, is if it gets to the point where it's full, ready to overflow, that pop-up emitter will come up and the water will be able to flow out of the dry well. My hope is that it doesn't actually get that full, but we will see. So I'm just folding that landscape fabric down around the top of the dry well prior to backfilling it with soil. So at this point, I decided not to use rock. I had some extra rock, but it wasn't really all that important to have drainage at this point, I guess. So I just went and I used the cleanest soil I had that I'd excavated out of the hole, and I'm just backfilling around that lid and the pop-up emitter. Hey, what are you doing? Come here. What are you doing? What's you? Hey? What's going on? Hey? What? Come here. Good boy. What? So there you have it. I hope you liked the video. It was a ton of work to install that French drain. I did all the digging by hand, shoveled all the rock by hand, which was, you know, in hindsight, I probably should have had an excavator, which would have made things a lot easier. So I don't really recommend doing that, but if you have water issues similar to mine, a French drain is a great system to install. Anyways, folks, going forward, I'll be making sure to put more content up regularly. I know it's been a couple months. Things have been really hectic. I'm actually expecting my first child shortly. So there's a lot going on, but there is content I'm working on, so it will be coming. So just be patient, hang in there, and new episodes will be coming shortly. Again, hope you liked the video. Make sure you hit that like button, please. Really helps out. Hit subscribe if you haven't already. Channel's growing, so there's lots to come. Anyways, guys, thank you. We'll see you on the next one.